Nolan Smith is going to be able to break out for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024. The second-year edge rusher has all the potential of being a really good player in this league. And on today's show, we're going to hear from an Eagle who thinks that big things are coming for the former first-round pick, 30th overall from the 2023 draft out of Georgia. First, why I think that Nolan Smith can break out. I think back to the pre-draft process, NFL scouting combine, and coming off the season that Nolan Smith had, in which there weren't a lot of sacks, there wasn't a lot of production in his final season at Georgia, but the Eagles took a player who kept sliding down draft boards and has a lot of ability. That's what you cannot deny. He has an elite first step. He has a lot of quickness and really good bend. And because of that, he kind of reminds you with his body type and the playing style of Hassan Reddick, who took a couple of years to really find his stride after being a first-round pick by the Arizona Cardinals out of Temple, and then since then has become one of the more elite sack artists in the National Football League. What did Reddick have at Temple? What did Nolan Smith have at Georgia? Very quick first step once the ball is snapped, a lot of twitchy quickness, and really good bend to get that leverage on opposing offensive tackles. Point number two, why Nolan Smith can break out, he's going to have more opportunities. He had under 100 pass rush snaps last year during his rookie campaign because people were ahead of him in the depth chart, and then Sean Desai and Matt Patricia didn't know what they were doing. Finally, we got to see what Nolan Smith could do and what he was capable of in the wild card round against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I thought that Nolan Smith showed some flashes there. The scheme is going to be much better in 2024 than it was last year, which I think does wonders and is going to pay dividends for a lot of the players on this team and the personnel. And then Nolan Smith, remember last year in the preseason when he injured that shoulder? It was a little bit of an issue at Georgia as well. This offseason, he got his shoulder fixed, and he's added some weight, which is something that I think he needed to do going into his sophomore campaign. His Pro Football Focus numbers as a rookie, again, very limited sample size, only 90 pass rush snaps. He had an overall Pro Football Focus grade of 50.5, a run defense grade of 59.6, a pass rush grade of 53.9, only one sack in year one, 8 pressures, though, 5 hurries, 2 quarterback hits. And I take a look at some of those numbers there, and I think there is something that you can build off of. The run defense grade, not awful. The pass rush grade, you can, of course, improve that a little bit, but the 8 pressures, 5 hurries, and 2 quarterback hits on 90 pass rush snaps in a bad scheme, I think Nolan Smith made the best of his opportunities last year, which is why I think the arrow is pointing up for him. Plus, he's going to be on a defensive line with Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Bryce Huff. He's not going to face a lot of double teams going into this year. And going back to the size component, he looked a little bit small coming out of Georgia and in year one. I know in the preseason, especially against the Cleveland Browns and against other teams, he was flying around. And that's the speed, that's the motor that he has. I also think he has a innate ability to play edge rusher, but also drop back in coverage, and Vic Fangio is going to ask his edge rushers to do that. So I think he's going to be utilized a little bit more. And that build being similar to Hassan Reddick, it's important to note that when Hassan Reddick was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, I'm going to look up his numbers real quick. A lot of people thought that he was going to be a bust to start his career, but he worked hard on his body. He worked hard on his pass rush arsenal, and after 2.5 sacks, 4 sacks, and 1 sack to start his career in his first 3 years, he has since gone double digits in each of the last 4 years, 12.5, 11, 16, and 11. I'm not sure if Nolan Smith's going to be able to become that type of player, but I say that because don't jump to conclusions, and let's not jump the gun and say Nolan Smith after year one can't play. There's a good football player in there, which is why he was such a highly touted recruit coming out of high school, going to Georgia. Here's what Darius Slay had to say about Nolan Smith having a big year. He looks a lot different. One thing I can say about Nolan, ever since I met him, he only knows one speed. He's one of the guys that you have to watch out for yourself because he hits teammates and everybody because of that motor. Even in practice, he's a guy that's going to run the ball or run to the ball from all coaches in the D-line, 10 yards. He's not a 10-yard guy. He's more of a see ball, get ball. It's going to be a special year for him, especially after him being behind Hassan Reddick all year last year. I think it will be very special. Last year, he did only have a 9.8% pressure rate. Not all that good. But I like what Darius Slay said there, kind of working off of what I said a little bit earlier. Like, what can you build off of? An elite first step, the bend and the quickness, the relentless motor, and the love for ball. And I think that's partially why Philadelphia drafted him, is that this is a dude who loves ball. Howie Roseman talks about this a lot. We want guys who enjoy playing the game of football. And I love that saying, see ball, get ball. In the preseason, limited workload during the regular season, and then in that playoff game against the Buccaneers, Nolan Smith had that relentless motor, and the vivacious personality is something that we also saw. Going back to the pre-draft process, the athlete that Nolan Smith is, relative athletic score grade, oftentimes we take a look at these here on Eagles Now as the Math Bomb scorers can help us kind of gauge how good these athletes are in the pre-draft process. They grade them on a scale from 0 to 10, and Nolan Smith earned a grade of 9.23. A lot of green. What's in the red? It's the lack of size that I said. He's only 6'2", 238 pounds. At least he was in the pre-draft process. Hopefully this year he's more toward 245, 250. Hassan Reddick floats around 240 pounds, but he also is a seasoned pass rusher. Again, it took him a little while to get there, but some of the twitchiness and the burst, the quickness, that's what Nolan Smith has. He clocked a sub 4.4 40-yard dash at nearly 240 pounds. Blazing fast. Vertical leap of 41.5, and then a broad jump more than 10 feet. That's the explosion that I'm talking about. We flip it back to the NFL.com scouting report on Nolan Smith. Lower weight class edge defender with the toughness to mix it up with bigger players based purely upon his sleek but smallish frame. One might expect him to be more effective as a rusher than run defender, but the opposite is true. Smith is hard to move off of his spot due to his technique and leverage, and he can be disruptive when firing into gaps. He can get off the mark as a rusher, but lacks the counters and contact balance to consistently assault the pocket at a high rate. Smith falls below the size standard some teams might look for a 3-4 outside linebacker, but he plays team-first defense with quality technique that should help him translate to the pros. Certainly some good there, and we saw his ability to play against the run. I thought a couple of times in the preseason, he kind of set that edge and was very patient, and then when the run came his way, he was able to disengage from the blocker and make a play on the ball, or at least divert the ball carrier toward the sideline until his teammates could come upfield and make a play. NFL.com on Nolan Smith's strengths, because we just don't know much about the player from the pro sample size. Plays with the team-first mindset and plus toughness. Attacks pulling blocks. First with hands to separate and stay ready. Rare point of attack leverage. Strength for his size. Cuts a tight, efficient track to the ball in pursuit. Potential to become a bend and flatten rusher. Agility for more creative edge-to-edge attacks in the future. And then his weaknesses, slender through the waist and hips with a need for more mass. Unable to generate speed to power conversion. Rush plan can be monotonous and lacking counters. Squared up punch from tackle can derail his pass rush. Unable to control block and shed quickly. Exerts excessive strain to battle tackles at the point of attack. Very average pursuit speed for a smaller player. I disagree with that latter point. I actually think he does have some pursuit speed, and I'm excited to see how Vic Fangio can use him as a weapon this year for this Eagles defense. It's looking to make some massive strides from last year's disastrous campaign. So how many sacks will Nolan Smith have in 2024? Will he break out like I think he will, like Darius Slay thinks he will? Let me know down below in the comment section. How about 6 sacks in year 2? We take that. 5-sack increase from last year. Be sure to give me a follow on social media, by the way. Approaching 13,000 followers on X, 30,000 followers on Instagram. Really appreciate your support. And don't forget to also subscribe to the channel for daily and year-round coverage of the Eagles. Go Birds.